4 of us.
How's everyone okay?
Bad.
Yes, thank you.
George, Debbie, I think.
Paul White won't be here because unfortunately he's actually away, so he's on holiday.
Oh, Paul White, right.
Yeah.
There's the other you. Was it George? Who's missing? Jiz is here.
George is here, I think, now.
Yeah, I'm here.
How you doing, George?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm just thinking how we can share that that other document. I've got that one that the coloured up plan.
Mm.
So
It is, if this works.
Would be useful.
There's the plan in the chat, George. How's that?
In the chat.
yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to get it to the other people.
Well, no, it's in the chat now, so well, if you click on it, it goes bigger.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but that's just in our chat, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
just a group. Let me. Do you want to start on the? Have you got the spreadsheet, Paul? Could you open up the spreadsheet and start working on
I'm
that?
just gonna find it, mate. Hold on.
George, I added it in the main chat so everyone can access it.
Great.
Never.
Where's the sheets? Let's have a look here. So my Outlook that's why I've turned the camera off. My Outlook's just been completely nightmares today. I think I'm working the old computer here too hard, George.
So, Karen, what have you done? You said you've added something to the main chat.
Yeah, the colored plan. I just took it from this chat to the other chat.
Right. Okay.
So I mean, all the other groups can still access this.
I'm just thinking how they will know.
Loading up the Excel, George. Hold on.
Well, in mine it popped up, so I presume in theirs it will pop up as well. So they'll know someone sent something, and hopefully a few people will have a look and go, "Oh, look, there's that picture."
Hopefully.
So we're looking specifically at dampers part
Yes.
of this process, yeah?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do as well, I'm going to copy that image. 1 second, mate. Hold on. Just going to get this all in one place, George, to hopefully make it a bit easier. So give me a second. Let's see if I can share my screen now, mate. Hold on. Share out. Screen 2. Okay, is that up?
Yeah, I can see that now.
Yeah. Is it big
Well,
enough
I
on
have to
yours?
close well, you have to close the chat bit because yes, and have that instead. That's better.
That's it. Yeah.
Otherwise-
You can use your
You can zoom in.
your mouse controls. I don't know if you know. If you look at your mouse controls, you can do things like that. If you use the scroll button and press control, you can zoom things in and out.
Yeah, sometimes.
Which you do on that. I think I can't make that any because I've got a 50-inch TV in it. I've got a massive TV, but how big it is on your
A
slides.
laptop. So not that big. The problem is you get pictures of people. That doesn't actually, if you get rid of the recording bar at the top, dismiss that, that makes everything a little bit bigger. Anyway, it's just about legible with that size for me.
I'm sorry about that, mate. So I had to take a call there from my neighbour, so I do apologise. He's a bit older than me. Yes, sir, mate. Can you oh, we've got people waiting in the lobby as well. Hold on.
They'll be coming in.
Got it? Perfect.
I don't think.
Is that Debbie just arrived?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I had to dash and do something.
No problems, mate. So, George, you there?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Do you want what to do? The compromised all the information.
No, ignore the compromise. That shouldn't have been in there.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Just the information.
Okay, no problems at all. So we're going to do smoke control, right? Okay, smoke control dampers, all right? Not fire dampers, George, smoke control dampers, yeah? Or do you want to cover both?
No, smoke control.
Okay, so smoke control. So we're talking about this shaft, yeah? And I don't know if you remember from digital construction, what we said is that it's not going to be a natural shaft, it's going to be a mechanical shaft, right? This is what we're going to base it on, right? So the first thing is obviously, you know, when you look at it, you say, okay, so what is the, you know, the material, what is the type? So who specifies the material of the smoke control system that sits in there, the dampers? Client, designer, main contractor, trade, manufacturer, supplier, operator. We tick all the ones that are relevant, George, yeah, or just the one who should be ultimately responsible?
No, I think all of the ones who are likely to be providing it. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
Because yeah, for that reason.
So, okay, so the type of system should be the designer. All agree with that?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I don't just because we know we haven't got a lot of time, but just to say, is everyone familiar with what a smoke control damper is specified against? Yeah.
Andrew,
No, if you're not, I can show you in 2 seconds straight what it is.
I'm not, but then, you know, I can find out, but, you know.
No, I can show it because I've got some stuff to send out I sent some stuff to Jules yesterday. I need to distribute it a bit further so everyone's on the same. Because you said, Debbie, prescription is the key to everything, and it's prescription we're getting massively wrong. So give me 1 second.
Yeah, because I'm thinking there's the building part of it, because that's part of the construction of the building, usually the actual shaft, and then there's the outlets, top, bottom, and on the doors or whatever they happen to be. So that's a mixture, isn't it?
So really quickly, just so we're all on the same hymn sheet, smoke control dampers are not fire dampers. It's a different standard. That's part 2. Can be used for compartmentation though to meet that requirement as well. But it's not the same field of application as fire dampers, which is part 2. So bear in mind, it's not the same thing. The only thing that's common is the prescription, which is the E, the I, or the S rating. Okay, so it's either an AA or an MA system. One has got an override control, so you can go automatic first and you can override it. Or one's automatic only. If it's automatic only, you don't have an override control or any sort of shape or fashion, right? They're tested both ways, fire inside, fire out, because the damper's asymmetrical. They're either tested for 300 cycles as a lifetime operation, 10,000 or 20,000, and they've got to withstand pressures of 500, 1,000 or 1,500 PA, and they can be for a single or multiple compartment system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that page out. That's okay with you, George?
Yep.
I will distribute this around. This is training that I do external. I'm going to paste that just here. So we've got that as well, okay? Yeah?
Paul, I'm just going to pop into the other meetings just to make
that's fine. I'll crack on with this, George, mate. It's fine. All right.
Cheers.
What I will copy into here as well, just so we've got it, is also this part. Debbie, you'll get this, and it's just good to. I'll send you through some stuff earlier, Debbie, as well. You'll see it come in. I'll send you through the IFE stuff that I do for them as well. So the first thing is the type of system. So who should be specifying whether it's AA or MA? Who should be saying whether it's vertically mountable in a wall or vertically mountable in a duct, or it can go in a duct to a wall, or it can go in a floor.
Horizontal, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got it. Slightly different to dampers. There's some nuances between it all. Who should be saying it's single or multi-compartment? Who specifies the pressure, and who specifies all of this? This is what we're talking about. So the basis of the type of material should be the designer, but also it's the main contractor, the same as this one here is, but it's also the trade contractor that does it as well. The manufacturer shouldn't be specifying anything. They should just be giving you what you've asked for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? Because the bottom line is all the different manufacturers hold different levels of these, what's been tested. But again, if you look at this particular system, right, this is the way I look at it. So don't shoot me down if you think I'm wrong. Yeah, you might find this interesting, Debbie. Is that I've got a multiple compartment building, so it should be a multiple compartment system. Yeah, prescription. It's going to go in a wall, so it should be VEW. It's a wall that's shown. Yeah. if it's got an override control on the floor, then it should be MA, not AA. It's got a fireman's override, right? It should be integrity. It should be low leakage rated S, because obviously you want to stop smoke going through the shaft to the other floor if there's a fan failure, etc. Reminiscent here, Debbie, of Grenfell with the Gilbert stamper, E category only, if you remember that part. It should be tested both ways because it's a compartment in its own right.
Yeah.
The question
Either
is,
up it or from it, yeah, to it.
Yeah,
from the
so
outside, yeah,
yeah, because it's
fire
an
on the
open.
floor or fire coming up the shaft.
Yeah, so
Both
the
sides,
big,
yeah.
the big thing is that it needs to withstand those pressures as well. And the first question is, this has been shown as 60 minutes and it's a 2-hour firefighting shaft. That should have been shown at 120. Because the problem is it's not compartmentation we're talking about smoke control. So the prescription shouldn't be compartmentation for drywall, it should be compartmentation for smoke control. And this is the bit that even, I'm not going to say manufacturers because recorded, but it's when people are getting it wrong, massively wrong. Does that make sense to you, Debbie? Yeah.
As the nuances, I mean, it seems to me that, once we've got this kind of information, it's ideal to put into some kind of decision support app. Yes, just
Yeah. So
would be really good.
When you were talking earlier, Debbie, I mean, the big thing is, and this is just a lewd diagram, is that if you look at these shafts, and excuse me on here, right, is that if it's mounted in the wall and there's no ductwork, then the wall's picking up the compartmentation of the floor, plus it's got to do the same performance as the duct. Because the duct's 500, 1500 or 1000 PA. The drywall can't do that. That's one of the big problems that's been going on, right? So you can see the nuances of all the different arrangements you could have for such a shaft. You could have it compartmented at floor level and just have a duct and a false wall. Then you're looking at the duct and the damper, or you can have the wall doing it and no duct. Then it's just the compartmentation of the duct. So the floor up the building and how that interfaces. And that's the selection process that has to be prescriptively described at the start. That's where it's kind of going wrong, if you understand. Just to give you some food for thought, all right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the movement of the structure and the services? That should be the designer that should be specifying that. And if it's design and build, then the main contractor still got responsibility for verifying the adequacy. And some of that will be trade contractor as well. Yeah? We'll get on to clients in a minute, Debbie, so I'll get your view on this. So what service maintenance is required? Well, that will come from the designer and it will come from the manufacturer. And possibly maybe the supplier of it as well. That's my view, because the service of these things is subject to DW144 and 145 and how you clean ductwork, how you get access, how you change componentry, what the requirements is for serviceability, and obviously the supplier and the manufacturer are coherent in that, and so is the designer. And so probably the main contractor and the trade contractor sucked into that as well, because it's a combination of all of them. The operator will just get the output of that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
I'm going through this in logical steps in my own head. If you disagree with anything I'm saying, please tell me, right? I'm sure Paul White would disagree with me with some of these bits. I'm sure that's why it's always good to have him, because he's great. He's the key person for this, really. What is the location? Coordinates? Well, that's going to come from... I've skipped one here. Oh, sorry. Environmental exposure, sorry. That's the problem of having a 15-inch TV, Debbie. You miss things. So let's do the one above first. What is the environmental exposure? That would be the designer, the main contractor, the trade contractor, and the manufacturer, because they'll tell you, how that performs in the environment that's within. What is the location? Should come from the designer, the main contractor, trade contractor. What is the resistance requirement? Should come from the supplier, the manufacturer, and the trade contractor, because it always ends up being CDP, this item. Yeah, do you agree with that?
Don't know what it means. What's the phrase resistance of what?
So if you look at this bit here, that's a summation of whatever's calculated in fluid dynamics terms. So if you've got a 0.8 shaft,
pressure resistance.
Yeah,
it's just the phrase resistance could be anything.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Environmental
You're
could
actually
mean
right
anything.
there.
I'm not quite sure what the question means sometimes, because it's a bit
We
Like,
need
what does that jargon mean when it's
yeah,
a non-jargony word like environmental?
yes. I
It's a
know.
bit, do you mean the weather
I'm just
or what?
yeah, I'm the same as you.
No,
That's
no,
what
that's
I
fine.
thought exactly, Andrew.
Yeah, you don't like that. Oh,
No, no, it's because it's got this at the start. I need to do that. That's it. You can paste it in the first time, but you need to add the little notch thing to cancel out the formula.
Speech marks, yeah.
Yeah. What is the intended
it's
use?
like
No, that's right. Yeah. So what is the intended use inputs in regards to the selection of type? The use input. So the intended use inputs will be again a combination of this, that. That's got to come from the designer. The main contractor's still got some responsibility. The trade contractor, the manufacturer, will just and the supplier probably in that one as well, and actually be the manufacturer. This is how I would see it. What has been installed by whom and when? That will come by that one, and probably the supplier, because the manufacturer is the manufacturer. So I can just freeze panes here a minute. Hold on. Freeze panes. Where's it gone? I always thought a big TV was a good idea. No, I've done the wrong one. Sorry, a big TV was a good idea, but actually it's not. It's a bit of a nightmare. Becomes a bit uncanny to wield it, unfortunately. So what other requirements are there? And is there requirements in terms of acoustic durability, long-term resistance, air tightness? Yes, it is. That's got to come from the designer, the main contractor, the supplier, and the trade contractor.
Not the manufacturer.
Well, no, because the thing is, when you buy a damper from a manufacturer, they just tell you what it could perform to. So they're not going to calculate the resistance.
No, I suppose you could choose. They would deliver it, but yeah, the designer would choose which one of them they do because they have many acoustic versions or something. Is that
yeah, correct. Because I think that the big thing I'm trying to preach externally, and it's good to hear Debbie say this all the time, which, you know, I know we don't talk enough, Debbie, at the moment because we're all so busy. It's about getting this prescription right. What is it? You know, what am I? What am I? What is my intended purpose? Am I appropriate? Does that make sense? So what is the test evidence of compliance to match the intended use? Size of opening, closure, opening. So again, you know, suitable for the services penetrating the wall or floor. So the designer should be able to give you some information. The main contractor's definitely got some responsibility. It's the trade contractor and the suppliers that also have to do it. Because again, this is about VEW, VED. So the bottom line is, just because something is CE marked under CPR doesn't mean you can put it where you want. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's about appropriateness. Yeah.
Yeah, big word, appropriateness. I love that word. Can the damper be positioned to access for maintenance? Well, again, that should be the designer, the main contractor, the trade contractor, and probably the supplier as well, because this is smoke control dampers. What damper accessories are needed for compliant installation? Types of builders frames. That again is going to be the supplier, the trade contractor, and I think the main contractor. I think this is the nuance, because the type of frame, if you imagine it this way, is that a wall's got its own standard, a damper's got its own standard, as in a smoke control damper. Because it is VEW, you know, it's been identified that it needs to be suitable for a wall. You know, the damper accessories required to get it into the wall, that's got to be done by the trade contractor or the supplier to make sure it's appropriate. With the main contractor, obviously, if it's design and build leading it. And I think that's one thing we should probably say, depends on the form of contract. What supports are needed for continuous supports during fire, i.e. channel supports, anchors? Again, that information will come from the supplier, the trade contractor, and probably the manufacturer as well.
Yeah, they'd say what their kit comes with or whatever.
Yeah. Bottom line is, if the VEW is the combination of the wall. If it's VED, it's not. It's the support system of the fire rated ductwork and appropriateness of the damper to connect to it, because it's one system. But that's the hard thing with these, right? But for dampers, for approvals for the dampers are needed, note CE marking will be mandatory. Well, actually, this isn't necessarily correct.
No. Are
And
we
I think-
losing CE marking?
No, it's UKCA, isn't it? You know, but I think we'll just change that, right? So we'll just do this. Oh, hate when it does that. Hold on. Do this quickly first. Otherwise, it's going to be a pain. UK.
Right.
And I think we need to just question that, because to give an example, if you do tunnels or anything where you've got high pressure differentials, and this only goes up to 1500 pascals. If you did a smoke control system in the underground, you would not be using that CE mark product, because they've got to do 6 to 10 kilopascals. It'd be an ISO system, which is bespoke, if that makes sense. Debbie, do you get that as well, mate?
I was on mute. Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm asking you because I know you're doing on competence. This is about understanding the appropriateness for the circumstance for which you install it.
Yeah.
So why do we? Yeah. So why have we even got the phrase saying that it would be mandatory? Because in some circumstances it's not appropriate.
Yeah, I think this is the whole nuance about what's happening with Regulation 7. I'm not sure what's happening with that. So the approvals for the dampers will come from the supplier, the manufacturer, the trade contractor, and ultimately we need to make sure it's correct as the main contractor.
What about the commissioner? Would they check? Would he be part of that
Come from that.
final? Because if a CE mark is a complete product, including the installation of it, who's going to sign off that it's CE approved as a complete installation?
Well,
If that sort of thing.
No, you're right. You're right, Andrew. This is the issue with the current thing, is that this word of fire stopping is a nuance, and it's actually rubbish. It's tosh, you could say, because fire stopping contractors deal with part 3 and part 4. We're talking about part 10 now, and we're talking about drywall. We're talking about part 10, and generally there's no passive fire materials in a part 10 installation. There's very few in fire dampers as well. Generally it's patras plates or it's gypsum plasters and stuff like that. There is some bats, but that's about the only method there is that involves passive fire materials. So this is about the appropriateness of the whole installation. Who's responsible for making sure it's correct? Well, ultimately, in my view, it would be the lead consultant, and the lead consultant is the person that instructs the design team on the work they're undertaking, which could be the main principal contractor in D&B, or it could be the client or the client's appointed manager in a traditional form of contract. I don't know if you know that word, lead consultant, Deb. It's one of my biggest bugbears. It's the person that instructs the design team.
Yeah. I mean, also there's separating out who's responsible for things and then who's ultimately accountable. Yes, those are two different things, but related.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. Love it. Is the design approach for damper holistic? Has the whole penetration been considered for restraint, differential movement, and deflect? So this is the hard bit. So it could be that one. It could actually be that one.
Designer, isn't it?
And it could be that one.
Definitely.
And I think this is the bit I've had these conversations so many times now, Debbie, as well, and Andrew, is that you have to treat post-Grenfell by contract type as well. I don't think there's any other way you can generically do it, because ultimately a client wants to get rid of their risk on a race to the bottom, so to say it, and expect the quality they should get on a non-race to the bottom scenario. So you've got to look at it that it could be any one of these three, but ultimately the trade contractor's got to check it. If there's a supplier, the supplier's going to be sucked into it. The manufacturer's just telling you how their stuff works. That's how I would look at it. Is the approval of the damper manufacturer needed for the use in mixed penetration seal? Because the fact is that should come from the designer, the main contractor, and the trade contractor. But the fact is, he's saying C trox, right? The bottom line is there's now an XAP for putting fire dampers in multi-service, but there's no XAP for smoke control. Essentially, you can't do it. I need to put on there, I think, for George to say you can't do this with smoke control. If I was Paul, I'm sure he would say this. You cannot Okay.
Can I ask a question here, please?
Go, mate.
Shouldn't we have, because all the questions shows that there's someone responsible for this and someone is accountable for this who would say yes and no. Shouldn't we have different tick based on this?
I think you're right, because there's the Reiki thing as well, which I think was that that's the Reiki there, right? So ignore that for the minute. I think we're going to tackle that last.
Okay.
Because I think because the thing is that it's said at the start of this is that smoke control in its own right is so complicated, because I think if you take our careers, and I mean, obviously, I think I'm only 42, to be honest with you. I know you're obviously all a lot younger than me, right? Now, just having the crack here with this one, is that what we've all been doing since regulatory reform, when building control no longer did fire certs, and actually they're not a designer, they're not a financially interested person, they actually have the ability to sign off no installation details, because it's all about what's been tested. You know, there was before, I think, on past experience, but past experience would be, I've tested this and actually I know it works, and here's the information. So it all still comes back down to the information that's appropriate to what you're doing. So ever since then, we've been in a situation where, you know, architects can't really design walls because it's about the, you know, the manufacturer's information and how the trade contractor forms it to form apertures, etc. And it's the same for all the other subjects that are there: dampers, ducts, doors. All they should be is the coordinator of bringing it all together. But if the products aren't selected, because traditional procurement has been, we get to the end of stage 4 and it's based upon no products, we're going to get the best value from the contractor. And that's the bit that's been going wrong. So what we've been doing for 20 years, we kind of, like, in my view, this is just my personal opinion, you've got to put it in the bin and say, we need to do the proactive and the non-reactive approach. That's how you're going to get best value in future. And it's a big cultural and behavioural step change for people to do it. I think that's what the Reiki will come in to do next. And I think with the Reiki, I think I've said to Jules before, is that I think we need to do it by contract types to give people an idea, you know, of actually the high level side of what those contracts likely mean. If anyone disagrees with me, just shoot me down. I've got no problems at all. You might be a mute, Debbie, going, "Oh, you're speaking rubbish." I don't know, but it's just like making sure we're all pretty much comfortable with what I'm saying. I don't want to say anything that's out of turn, really. Is there an identification of use? How can the identification insulation? Well, there is an identification for use, and that comes from the manufacturer, and probably the supplier's linked should be linked to that as well.
Depends what we mean by supplier as well.
Well, I'm looking at it on purely on generally smoke control dampers normally come, if you buy fire rate ductwork systems, you know, or smoke control systems, I should say, really in the basement. Generally, the guy that does the smoke control system and does all the CFD for it, in design and build terms, will specify the kit that goes on the end of it, because it's normally kept as one package, the same way that Colt might do a shaft. Do you know what I mean? So the supplier and the manufacturer probably, I would say, is who that applies to. And maybe the designer's got an initial one to say this is what it should. The problem is you could say all of them, but it depends again on the contract type. I don't think there's a right or wrong to this.
Contractor, I think you're right on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you say then? So Andrew's the main contractor.
So yeah, you're right. Not the main contractor. They
Yeah.
fit. Everyone else tells them to, which is what's wrong, as you just said. That's what used to happen. Actually, the main contractor went, "I'll tell you what you need is one of these, mate. It will do."
Yeah, here's a sketch.
That's what. Yeah, you know, I've got one of these at home. I'll bring it in. Yeah.
Bish bash bosh.
Bish bash bosh, that'll do. How many times have I been to a contractor and I go, "What is this and why is it there?" And they go, "Oh, my mate who does the fire alarms, he reckons you need one of them." That's the design. Got to stop.
Yeah, it is. What are the needs for access to? What are the needs to be accessible for inspections? That will come from the supplier, from them, and it should come from the designer as well, and probably the trade contractor. What are the limitations? Well, that will probably come from the supplier, the manufacturer. What is the lifespan with these two, I reckon? What are the maintenance requirements? Well, there should be something from the designer, because they should be saying if it's 145, whatever applies to it. Though a lot of it's locked up in building regs now anyway. The manufacturer and the supplier, and probably the trade contractor as well. Because other stuff involved.
I mean, just to miss it out, we haven't really used the client developer much, but actually, in my experience, the ERs from the client sometimes will say, "Well, the designer say we can have it or you don't. Which one do you want?"
Well,
and then the client would say, "Well, actually, no, we want that because we know it we know we need it.
Yeah, well, what I just sent through to Debbie, I'll get this. I'll get George to distribute this. Was this right? Because I think what we're talking about is in there's 4 things. This is just in my experience again. So please shoot me down if you think I'm wrong, anyone. Right? Is JCT always has in it in a shape or fashion or a form the 3 things: discrepancy, adequacy, and statutory requirements. Statutory requirements will rule all. Adequacy will rule discrepancy. But if it's adequate, but it's not statutory compliant, that will change the requirement of adequacy. So this is basically what we're talking about, aren't we? So if you've got an ER that says all the dampers in the building are part 2 for smoke control, then it's inadequate. And for statutory compliance, it needs to be part 10. It matters not what's in the ER and design and build. You just got to go away and do it. And this is why I think I've said this so many times, I think now, is that you have to schedule out contracts in simple forms and say it's design and build, that the contractors aren't really responsible for the adequacy of it with a design team, or it's traditional where the client and their design team's responsible for it and the contractor's just delivering it. And that's the 2 you've got to break it out by, whether it's a client responsibility or whether it's a contractor responsibility, one or the other. And it depends on the form of contract. And that's what I think the hard thing's going to be, you know. And schedule 1 is always how you basically manage change process. So, you know, what are the timescales likely for upgrade? And we'll talk about this client thing at the end. I want a bit of a debate on it because it'd be good to get everyone's views. Because I openly say that the wrong with the industry is the way that clients, you know, appoint maybe a development manager. They go to the cheapest PQS, the cheapest design team, everything. Then it goes to a contractor under a single stage engagement, and the building's ill designed, ill thought through, and the body's too big for the skin. But that's just how I've seen it.
Yeah,
for too long.
I agree with that.
So what other types could likely for upgrades or replacement? That will come from them and the supplier. There may be something that's in the contract, as you say, there from the client about it. What is the time? They might say you must be able to turn this around in, you know, so many weeks. So that could be a combination actually of all of this.
Yeah.
Should there be local security present?
With the same
Okay.
thinking, wouldn't we say that about the lifespan?
No, well, it could be.
No, lifespan usually.
No, he's right. It could be the same thing.
You could designate it.
No, yeah, because you might be saying is you're UCO, aren't you, Kieran? Yeah, is that correct? Yeah, sorry, it's my headset. No, it could be because you might be specifying the product's got to last 50 years.
Yeah, because there's 2 options. You have the cheap short one, or we'll pay a bit more because it will save us in the long time. Yeah.
And how it works in lifespan for this kit, it's a combination of these 3 key figures. So if you've got a system that's running for general ventilation and smoke, and it's doing 3 positions, closed, general, and smoke, you need a damper that's probably gone through 20,000 oscillations to get a lifespan over 25 years. Does that make sense? Because that's
whether you want to pay up front for a better system that has a longer life. Basically, it is an optional thing.
Yeah.
So client thing should be ticked where there's an option.
Yeah.
As to which one we have.
Yeah. We'll go through it once, and we'll have another quick. We've got time. We'll have a quick run through it. Make sure we're all on the same hymn sheet. I think we need to say to George, you need to break this out by D&B and traditional forms of contract, because otherwise it becomes too confusing. Should there be security present so they cannot be tampered with or misused? Well, with smoke control dampers,
they're sort of built in, isn't it?
It's like built in. It's in the manufacturers, and it's the supplier that will ultimately in the trade control when he gets that kind of locked in.
As I found out when someone wanted to get through a smoke damper door and just bashed it until the brackets bent.
Well, the interesting thing is with the door argument is you can't use doors for smoke control anymore unless they're Part 10 tested.
I know.
We were doing them for years because of the old BRE report in 2002. It's the wrong thing now.
Yeah.
How do plan of the builders affect this? Is there planned works? Is there plan? How does it affect this? Is there planned works in the building? Well, I think. How do planned works in the building affect this? Is there planned works? Is there planned works?
Or is there works in the building?
Well, I'm not sure about that one. Are there any aspect animations to show the location of the fire stopping that have been installed? Well, there will be, and that will come from probably the main contractor, the trade contractor, and the supplier will combine to do that.
Commissioner as well? Would the commissioner certify that? had been done, because they usually sometimes they tie it in with the O&M manual. Because an O&M manual is, you know, has it been commissioned properly is one of the first questions you get.
Let's just show. This is about locations of fire stopping only.
Location, though, yeah. Depends what the commissioner does.
Will it be the fire?
They're a bit of a clerk of works as well, you know. But I'd say
Yeah.
maiden trade contractor. Okay.
Let's have a look at this bit in a minute as well. What are the means of application? Brick, block, plastic.
You miss one.
So the level of protection. Sorry, yeah, level of protection will come from the designer, the trade contractor. That will just come from the designer.
Of course. Yeah, should be preset. Yeah.
And it could be them actually as well. And design and build. I'm going to put them both down. What are the means of application? Brick, block, around plastic or even plastic. Okay, so it's brick or block or standard supporting construction. That information will come from. It should come from the designer. The main contractor's complicit. So's the trade contractor, and so's the supplier. Because it's VEW. Is it VEW in the standard supporting construction? There's only two types: plasterboard or brick and block. This is linked to appropriateness. So is there a true cause and effect of all active systems that are interlinked? Well, it comes from the trade contractor. It could come from the designer, and it can come from the main contractor and the supplier all linked together. What is the position? Can it be accessed from both sides? Okay, again, this is a big one. It is the designer. Should be looking at this, the main contractor, the trade contractor, and the supplier, because all seals, there's only one on the market in dampers I know about, which is fire dampers, not smoke control dampers, which is one-sided for access for installation. But you still need both access both sides for cleaning. Should the installation shields be checked around the outside? That'll be the trade contractor, the main contractor, and the supplier. So if I just go back, I think this one here we need to ask a question on that. I'm not too sure what he means. I hope you agree with that. I'm not too sure.
Would it not be the manufacturer on that one?
Well, should the installation shields say how should the installation shields be checked around? Well, no, do you know what?
I'd say our system
Manufacturer's information.
Yeah,
yeah, you're right.
Is the one you highlighted about existing buildings?
I think this is an operator thing. How do the works in the building affect this? Is there planned works in the building? I think how that's affected probably comes from the supplier and probably the operator.
And the client? The client work might.
Yeah, the client as well, because it depends.
They would set up where they could choose timing, for instance.
If I ever see a management strategy at the start of a job, I'll eat my boots. I'm telling you. So it's the last thing that ever gets issued is a management plan. It's probably the most important thing. Let's just have a quick look back at client. So I think if you were doing a design and build job, the client will give ERs, as you say, but they won't give the
question is whether they're responsible.
Yeah. Well, they're not responsible for.
Say this is my preference.
Because the adequacy.
The
adequacy goes down the line, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's from as to whether or not they're technically responsible.
I think the client one. I think you need to sort of discuss. It's not right or wrong. So we'll go back into a group in about 5-6 minutes. I think it's a case of how do you say,
Well, say it's only when there are. If you think of it the other way around, when we finished or whatever, and someone said, who chose this? And the designer said, well, it was the client's choice. The client asked for that. Then you'd say, well, they're responsible for choosing that. Whereas in other items, the client might ask for it, but then the designer should say, no, you can't have that because it's not to standard. But if there's options, then the client might say, well, like we said about lifestyle, then you can say it's an option they can choose. It's about money, in other words, rather than about there is only one right way to do it.
Yeah, so things like that could be because it's about paintability. Is there any test that wouldn't be the client? See,
isn't that a choice thing?
This one, what, this one here?
Can the damper be positioned to allow access for maintenance?
Well, that's basically the thing is that is,
Isn't that that's a designer making sure it does happen, isn't it?
yeah. And I think the thing is, you know,
Not an optional thing.
well, the strict codes about how you're supposed to do it, because you've got DW144145 that tells you you've got to be able to get at
You have
the
to maintain.
damper,
Yeah.
to clean it, maintain it, you know, check it yearly, even if it's motorized, not you still got to check it yearly.
Yeah.
Because you've got to get all the crap off the blades, everything, you know. What damages are needed? That wouldn't be the client. That wouldn't be the client. That won't be the client. But just looking at stuff here, you know, even for maintenance, it won't be the operator, because that will come from us. The operator may be involved, but at the end, but I mean, I think we need to just clarify a bit with George how we want to tackle those ones, because it's what I'm always conscious of is that how people, if you give it the stuff, how they receive it. Because if you put it in there with the operator, you know, the project managers get everyone in a room. That's all they'll do. Do you know what I mean? So what approvals needed? That won't come from the client, will come from the designer. Here's a manufacturing use, but it's an indication of how to use it. Limitations, lifespan. So limitations. Is any access that comes from, you know, them. Even the main contractor is probably part of that as well. I'm going to keep it as that.
And also, I've noticed we haven't really given anything to the commissioner yet.
No, I'm looking. I'm looking.
What do we employ them for if we don't?
Well, the only thing they check on this is volumes and is performance of the system. Who checks like the system performs?
Yeah.
That's it.
Like, has it been installed correctly? Type of questions, aren't there?
Should be one on here about. I'm going to put on here about. Well, actually, Joe, cause and effect is probably a good one. Actually,
yeah, I'm going to say true cause and effect, because it says true cause and effect.
So
that would be
the commissioner's involved, yeah, and probably the operator's involved in that as well.
Can it be assessed? What is the position? I don't quite understand what it means. Can it be accessed from both sides?
If it's in the wall, if you've got it in a riser, which is a shaft wall, and you can't get on the inside of the riser, then you can't look at it from both sides. You can't inspect. You can be honest, you can't even install the sill. Lots of jobs at the moment where the body's too big for the skin. If you've got ductwork in a riser and you've got a damper coming out of it, forget smoke control, it's a normal damper, and you've got a gap, anything under 450 mil, you're not installing the sill on the inside. You ain't going to be able to do it. You will never do it with any quality. You'll never do it.
You've got to get in there to do it,
yeah. So what is the position? I think that's probably about, I think the question with this, I think with Jules, is probably one about, because all the commissioner does is goes out and verifies a volume that a designer said should be there. And the designer could be initially saying, you can have a big, good practice, someone like Hilson's, wherever they have gone, this is the type of the system. You've gone to Fire Protection, which is another great company. They've done all of that. They've selected, say, a Mandic or a different damper that goes on the end, or a Trox, whatever. The volume should be 10 air changes and it equates to this flow rate, and it should be in zone B. They'll just go and check that. All their ones should be closed. That's all they're going to verify. And say, yep, I've got it within 100 to 105% duty. I'm happy. Job done. That's all they'll be doing. Do you agree with that, everyone?
Yeah.
So I think the big thing is here about clients, and this is, if it's design and build, a lot of these main contractors are going to turn over to client, developer, whoever's responsible for the contract and the trades. I think the operators involved with stuff, but it's not about who's responsible, because they're not responsible. They're responsible for that planned working, and so the supplier should give advice and the client. Actually, maybe because the rest of it, it's a hard one because it could be all of them.
It was interesting. I was in a CPD training on contracts. And what he was saying was that what often goes wrong when contracts go wrong is because the responsibility hasn't been correctly allocated to the person who can control that.
No.
So if you give control or financial or responsibility to the person who actually can't do much about it, then that's when it all goes wrong. So if the client says, oh, I want this, but it's a load of rubbish, well, that doesn't really help. Well, they're not the person who can actually deliver it. So it's about who delivers it as well as who
it's this again,
makes the changes that make the difference. That's the point.
Look, the bit I've sent this for NAW, you've got this now. I think you've got you should have the filled out version. This is the older version, but I've got a better version somewhere. What you should have is that this is what we're traditionally doing with procurement. But all this stuff, all this specific kit and product doesn't exist until the CDP came on board. So you can't do that really under the. Well, you can do it under the Gateway 2 system, but God, I won't be involved in that bloody job when you're going through all the major changes because it doesn't work.
Paul,
You need-
we need to rejoin the main group.
we're done, George. Anyway, I mean, George, the only question was, we just close this down. Really, is that this and this would depend on whether it's a traditional form of contract or design and build. That's the only two things, you know, to bear in mind. All right.
Good. Okay, we can talk about that.
Yeah, we'll bring it into the group now. I'm switching over now, George. Okay.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy. Take care. See you in a second, guys.
Yeah.